This is Vicki Joe, and I'm here with Dario Nardi. Dario is a kind of a shining light right now in the field of typology, and he's been doing this amazing research with the neurosciences. So I'm kind of curious to know, how long have you been doing this research?
Well, I started 7 years ago, which I guess would put it in 2006 or so. And for the first 5 years, I worked primarily with college students, which, as we know, are very representative of the world population, aren't they? So for the past 2 years, in answer to really legitimate questions, I've been working primarily with what I call midlife folks, but in practice that means like 30 and over.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What kind of protocol and equipment and lab? Bring me into that kind of context.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So maybe people think of a lab as something that's like really sterile.
Sterile, the white coats.
Exactly.
And yeah.
And that's actually, it wasn't just the cost issue, although that was a big thing, but fMRI, which I don't use, that involves a big rumbling machine. And I was really wanting to look at people and their social interactions, and to get the full range of people's ways that they express themselves and interact and coordinate with the environment. And so EEG felt not only cheaper, but also a lot easier to do that, to get natural responses from people. So just that is the setup, and knowing that there's going to be people who come into the lab, there'll be small groups, there'll be 3 people, 5 people, some of them are confederates, 2 of them will be an assistant, whatever that is. And that actually does bring out more interaction in people. Now, for the practical part of it, I have here my little favorite equipment. So this is, for some of you who haven't seen this before, don't worry, we're not putting this on right now. You can see all of the wires on the inside, though. So this is a very traditional, this is called the 1020 EEG cap, and it's a very international standard. You can take a look if you like. Yeah. And so folks put this on, and this is for folks who have a normal-sized head. And yes, I have had someone come in once whose head did not fit very clearly.
So it's like a shower cap.
It's
right?
very much, yeah, it's nylon and so on, yeah. And then there's this here, which connects to a console that processes the signals that come in from the surface of the brain. So this is picking up the activity in the outer layer of the brain, the neocortex, which is, of course, not the whole brain, but it is very significant. I mean, it is the number of folds, the complexity, and so on is exceptional in human beings. It's really a seat of consciousness and interesting stuff. So folks put this on, and if you could just hold this for a second here. Yeah, and then what I do is, I love this part of it because I bring out this syringe. And do you
have a laugh that goes with it?
No, oh, it's a little bit tight at the moment. But the point, then you see this look on their face, which is just priceless. And then I'm like, no, see, this is actually very blunt on the end of it. And the idea is you fill this with there you go, see, it's not so bad. And you fill this with a gel that is easily washed out, and then person's wearing a cap, you want to make sure you get it through there, and you do what's called a braiding a little bit in order to make sure it gets through the hair and sort of is right there at the skin level. And then you inject the gel just enough so that it fills each space. And then you calibrate it and so on, and that process takes about 15 minutes. And then these little hooks here, you do a whole bunch of other things. You want to get it all in place so that it's nice and snug, and you want to have electrical grounds and all of those things. So the person gets prepared. And obviously, this is not as bad as a giant rumbling machine, but it's a little bit distracting, I think, at first to people. But when I spend 2 to 3 hours with them, which is really how long I do spend, I'd say an average of 2.5 hours, then they stop noticing it after a while, very much so. So they come in, and the first third of the time, the protocol I've been following for the past 6.5 years, which I'm thinking of changing, but I don't know, I'm torn about that, is the first third is solo activities. So they do a relaxing meditation activity. They sign their name with their preferred hand and with their non-preferred hand. They do some math problems. They do some risk and uncertainty problems. And these are all things that either are really, really basic, or they've been drawn from neuroscience experiments, like the risk and uncertainty ones are already out there, and people have explored those. They draw their hand.
So you're not reinventing the wheel?
No. Just, the whole idea is let them do solo stuff that is just a wide range of things as possible, as kinesthetic, as auditory, all of that. and listening to music and playing some video games. Then they also do group activities for the next third, small pairs or small groups. So they might use tarot cards in order to sort of lay them out and then organize them with each other and tell a story together. And then I say, okay, now tell a different story. They'll do role play scenarios, and they can in fact get up, and then once they're standing up, they can't move around too much, but they can actually stand. And they do ball toss with each other, so throw a little ball back and forth. And it really is, it's great to see their interactions. Oh, of course, speed dating.
Speed dating? Speed
dating, that's right. And as I've traveled to different countries in the world to describe what I do, that's always interesting to see whether there's a word for that in that language or not. And to have that explained to some audience members. So so all of these different interactions that they have. And then the last third is really more driven by the subject themselves. That they come in, you would say their keyboard or their guitar or their crayons and paints or whatever it is, and they do something creative. Or at least in their area of expertise, it could involve using the computer or something like that, in order to capture what is it that they find is their area, whether they do every day or there's their exceptional moments. I've had an actor come in wanting to know how his brain worked when he did cold reading, when he did highly rehearsed reading, and when he did improv. And yes, his brain did work differently in each of those. So it really has been fun in that regard. Now, the information that comes in with the EEG is tremendous. So in 2.5 hours, you're talking about maybe 45 million data points.
Wow.
So a tremendous amount of data, and that really is very direct. It's not like, you know, the person's doing pencil, paper, self-reflection or something like that. And that information, as it comes in initially, is just voltage readings from the surface of the brain, as best we can infer from the equipment. Now, I use a very traditional equipment source in traditional ways. And then that information needs to be processed to figure out brain waves, which many of you may have heard, alpha, beta, theta, delta, and so on. And then also the amount of those waves. So I sort of describe it as like the ocean. That's the metaphor. You go to the beach and there's the speed that the waves come. You know, do they come quickly? Do they come, you know, sort of rolling in sort of slowly? And then are they big waves or small waves in terms of their height? So you can have really big waves that are very quick, like during a storm, or you can have very slow ripples that come in quickly. So that's the kind of information that we get from there. And then we can go another step further in processing it.
Wow.
And in terms of looking at potential network connections in the brain, in other words, regions that go up and down together.
So let me get this straight. So you're capturing about 2.5 hours worth of data with the person, and then everything after that is a data analysis.
Yes,
right? Okay.
Absolutely,
okay.
absolutely. And I do very. I'm a strong believer in, and have even in my PhD program a background in the scientific process itself. So really good science, if you all remember chemistry, what you do is you go into the chemistry lab, you're following a protocol, but you're also keeping a lab book where you take notes. So it isn't all just about looking at quantitative analysis afterwards. I'm also keeping notes. I record some of the sessions on video, so we can see what were the person's movements and so on. After each set of tasks, or even if it's a long single task, we debrief. I ask what was going on in your mind, because that's a criticism of neuroscience today. How did we know what the person was thinking? Maybe we should ask. And a lot of what I've been doing, as I describe it, is a very elaborate pilot study. You know, people come to me and they say, like, oh, you've proven such and such, and I'm like, I've certainly done no such thing. No such thing. My first sort of goal was to discover what variables were worth observing, what phenomena, what patterns were out there. Otherwise, it could take several lifetimes in order to strictly nail down all these different things. And of course, I brought in a variety of people, equal numbers of men and women. Now I'm going for a nice cross-section of ages. I had people from exchange students from Japan, from Iran.
Oh, cool. So you're getting cross-cultural
Absolutely, absolutely. And even
Fantastic.
within American culture, making sure I had a balance of different ethnicities. So a whole bunch of things. So of course, personality as well, wanting to know, is there a diversity in terms of personality, cognitive styles, and so on.
Right. Now, have you, are you published? I know.
Yeah.
Show me.
People always want to know. And if I was an academic, yes, I would publish in the literature. But I'm actually still engaged in finding enough research and having enough subjects to do it.
You're still immersed.
I am
things.
absolutely.
So this is very preliminary, if we dare say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is the book if you want to find out more. Okay, this is Neuroscience of Personality. It's on Amazon. It's in a variety of places.
Yeah, Radiance House, I think.
Yeah, radiancehouse.com. The other thing is I do have 2 patents, which will be published. I've been informed in January of 2015 and probably in April of 2015.
That's awesome.
Yes, and patents require that you really know what you're talking about. And I would tell you the cost of doing a patent also makes sure that you want to make sure you're doing something legitimate. The other thing is I do meet with neuroscience people and clinicians. I have a psychologist I work with. When I present to neuroscience groups, there's nothing bizarre or unusual that I'm doing. There's instead a lot of interest and excitement and how can we use this and what more needs to be done, which are all great.
And there's this, as you're talking about this, you're reminding me there's something out there, what's it called? The human connection?
Human Connectome project.
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah. So the Human Connectome project was done with fMRI. But what they did is, so they put the people in the rumbling machines and they used a computer to interact with. What's important about it is they've published on this, and it's a joint project with the UK and the United States and top institutions. And they've created a database. It's based now on about 70 some odd people, where they have those people go through a variety of tasks. So doing math problems, reading stories, listening to music, and so on. And in many ways, even though I'm using EEG, it's the same idea. People are going through a protocol of things.
It's different
right.
Really.
Different equipment.
And a different lens, is that?
Absolutely. So you're getting different information with it. But when you compare the results of the Human Connectome project, it's the same kind of results as what I'm getting in terms of localization of activity in the brain, creating a database of people. And they were very comfortable publishing the 70 because, frankly, in neuroscience, it's not the same as pencil paper assessment, and it's perfectly legitimate to publish with 12 people, with 30 people, whatever it is as your subject base. And so 70 is actually, which is about what I have now, 75, is really a really great number to start with.
Great. So this is like early information, gives us something to look forward to without being definitive.
Absolutely. In fact, I make a point in my book of saying this is all preliminary. Research like this will take decades. And yet I wanted to get it out there in order to make connections with people. And of course, being any researcher, I look at this book and I'm like, oh my God, it's 2 years old already. It's out of date. It's out of date.
It was out of date the minute it got
That's what the minute it was published.
Yeah,
so that's how it goes. And I'm actually pleased because I want there to be new information. It's exciting to me to discover new stuff.
And I'm curious, are there any cautions that you have for people who are looking at it? I mean, I hear the caution about this is preliminary, it's not definitive. Are there any other cautions that we should kind of hold?
I do believe that beyond being preliminary, there are some folks who feel that that we're just the brain, or that we can make these definitive statements just because your brain shows that you're like this, therefore you're this kind of person, or whatever it is. And I don't even use that kind of terminology, nor do I even say that each region of the brain, like here or here, definitively handles something. It aids us. We use the brain's resources in order to help meet our needs, our practical needs, our psychological needs, and that's actually a very sort of evolutionary perspective. The brain evolved in order to help us meet our needs, to survive and to prosper.
Right. Well, in the studies that I'm doing, we like to say the brain is an organ of the mind, but the idea that the mind is contained in the brain is mistaken. So
I mean, there are divisions within neuroscience where some people are very strongly, they're called hard materialists, and they would say, no, it's all just brain and mind are the same thing. And I don't come from that perspective, that there's culture, there's environment, and all of that.
I appreciate you're saying that, because you're showing there's like a distinction in the neuroscience field. There are divisions it's not just
Yeah.
everybody believes this thing. So
and healthy divisions right now.
Right. Yeah. Sounds like it.
Excellent.
Great. Thanks so much, Dario.
Absolutely.
And I hope you learned something that was interesting from this, and we're going to continue the conversation even longer later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
There are many more to come, hopefully.
Thanks, Dario.
Thank you.